And so we find these three guys, and they make some very strong statements that we shall be looking at this morning, so that if we are not able to look at anything else, we shall be able to appreciate and understand, determine their hearts, that for 10 days, and we shall argument, the discussion that Daniel is having with his master. And his master is telling him, if the king discovers that I'm not giving you the portion that he himself has appointed for you, then I'm not sure what will happen to my neck. It was a life and death situation for the Daniel's masters, even the servant of the king. And so, very interesting discussion. And we shall look at a few verses even as we understand this and as we proceed. Let's look at Daniel chapter 1 together. And quickly, it's still morning, and so the great thing about teaching in the morning is that people are fresh, people are receptive, and you're able to receive your portion, and you're able to run away with it. Is it not the case? Yes, so while we are fresh, let's look at a few verses, and I believe that the Lord will speak to you even as he speaks to me. Verse 4, what does it say? Young men, in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and who they might teach the language and the literature of the Chaldeans. These were the kind of people that the king was looking for. People that are quick to understand. If it was today's world, we'll be talking about the A student, the guys who study in Alliance and such other top schools, sharp to understand so that they can go into some training for 3 years to understand the culture, the language, the literature of the Chaldeans. That is the kind of men that Nebuchadnezzar was looking at. Now, verse 6 says, now from among those of the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, the 4 men that we are talking about this morning. Verse 7 says, to them, the chief of the eunuchs gave names. So for them to be assimilated and to be able to fit in the culture, in the language, and in the literature of the Chaldeans, they had to be given new names. Hallelujah. There is a lot that we learn when names are changed. We always say that names have power. We always say, be careful what you call your children. Some of us, if we had been given a chance, maybe we would have changed our names. But maybe we came to learn later in life. But it's so important, so powerful, what your name is. And it's important that you try and find out what is the meaning of your name. What would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore, he requested the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. So what we want to realize is that this was not your ordinary situation. The king has already given a directive of the kind of food, because they were getting into serious overs, and see the kind of discussion that Daniel is having with the eunuch. Now, verse 9, God had brought Daniel into the favor and goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink. Who has appointed is the king. I fear my lord and king, who has appointed your food and your drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the younger men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king. Hallelujah. This was not your ordinary situation. It is a situation that was challenging, that was life-threatening. By the time the eunuch is hanged, these guys would also have been hanged, because they are going against the king's directive. So it was a serious situation that Daniel and his 3 colleagues were facing. And look at what Daniel says, led by the Spirit of God. So Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuch had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days, and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Hallelujah. So Daniel determines in his heart that we are going in this time, as we go through these 10 days, it will be a time of focusing on God to experience his faithfulness. If indeed the hand of God is upon our lives, give us 10 days. Daniel had not experienced this before, but he had a conviction in his heart that in 10 days' time, he would look much better. that the king's servant would not need to be hanged. Praise be to Jesus. Give us 10 days. Feed us only with the vegetables and water. And test us in 10 days. Hallelujah. Do you think these guys went to sleep for 10 days? They were not sleeping. They were in serious prayer, my brethren. They were engaging in a warfare, in a battlefield, because they knew that this is a life and death situation. The king has given a directive. We have decided to go against the directive of the king because it is against our customs as a people of God. And so Daniel puts his life on the line. With the 4 men, they put their lives on the line and they decide that we are going only to feed with water and vegetables. A very delicate situation. Look at verse 15. And at the end of the 10 days, their features appeared better. And this is what I love. Better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacies. Hallelujah. Bwana asifiwe. How I pray that God will help us. That as we set ourselves to pray and fast, that as we set ourselves to this kind of prayer, that you are denying yourself a portion of your delicacy that is indeed more nutritious than what you are deciding to take, that you'll be found fatter. You'll be found better in flesh than everyone else. Hallelujah. Hallelujah to Jesus. That you shall be found fatter. And not only in the flesh, you shall be found fatter in the spiritual realm. You shall be found fatter in your walk with God. You shall be found fatter in your service to God and even into the ministry as you commit yourself to prayer and fasting. Because you shall be risking your life. Reverend always tells us here that risk, the only way to get higher is to risk your life. Get your feet into the deeper end. And that is exactly what David and the 3 of his friends did. Verse 17 says, and for those 4 young men, God gave them, look at this, they have decided to deny themselves what? The delicacies of the king. The good portion of meat and honey and milk and wine. They have decided to go against the king's directive. And by the grace of God, they have been able to convince the eunuch in charge of them. So look at what God does. Look at what God works in their lives. Verse 17. For those 4 young men, God gave them knowledge, skills in all literature and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Hallelujah. So these guys were not only fat and good in their looking. But remember, this is what the king's servant asked for, right? He told them, don't you think you look slackened? You look weakened before the king. So the guy was looking at the physical what? The physical appearance. But God gave them more. Because God gave them a good appearance. He made them fatter and better.